On today's podcast episode, I'm talking with Tony Teufel of Teufel Tennis about tips that you can use to get back into the swing of things if you've been out of tennis for a long time, if you've never played, or even just tips you can use to up your game if you're a competitive tennis or pickleball player. So stay tuned. I think you're going to really like this episode. And if you do, subscribe to our podcast so you get notified of our future episodes.
You're listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast with Dr. Dave Candy, St. Louis's leading expert in chronic pain relief. Dr. Candy specializes in helping women age 40 and above to overcome chronic, nagging aches and pains without medication, injections, or surgery, so they can stay active, mobile, healthy, and independent. Whether you're suffering from pain yourself or know someone who is, pain's a universal experience that affects us all, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. Knowledge is power, and having the right information can help you or someone you love get on the road to recovery. On the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast, Dr. Candy talks with other pain experts from around the world to give you the information you need to recover, the peace of mind of knowing that you're not alone, and the hope that lasting relief from chronic pain is possible, and it doesn't require relying on pills, injections, or surgery in order to do so. So sit back, relax, and open your ears, mind, and heart, and let the healing begin.
Welcome to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy. I have with me here today Tony Teufel, the owner of a traveling tennis and pickleball company here around St. Louis. And I've known Tony actually for a really, really long time. We went to elementary school together in Cincinnati, Ohio. And we also played on the same tennis team growing up. Now, I was a decent tennis player, but Tony was always the it kid, the one that everyone could tell he was going somewhere with tennis. He was a couple years younger than I was, but even at 9 or 10 years old, he was beating teenagers. And he ended up being a 3-time state finalist and having a successful NCAA Division I career. And now we both ended up in St. Louis years later. Tony, welcome. It's good to have you here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Tony, tell me a little bit about some of the common injuries you see in tennis.
Well, obviously, tennis elbow, with a name like that, it's, commonly occurred with tennis players. Also, for a couple of the older people, they have a ruptured Achilles tendons. So those are kind of the main two injuries. And also just overuse from tendinitis.
So let's start with the obvious, tennis elbow. What are some factors that people can use to prevent that if they're just getting back into playing tennis, maybe after being on a break for a while?
Yeah, just making sure you're kind of doing your weight room exercises, kind of low weight, high repetition. Also your equipment that you could use. There's different types of strings that are more arm friendly. Different tennis rackets, some are stiffer than others, some have more flex. So definitely the weight room, lightweight, and also the equipment that you can use.
So as far as tennis rackets, what else are you looking at? Does the frame matter? Is it just the strings?
Well, the frame, the strings, and your technique. If you grip the racket too tight, that's not very good on the body either. You want to be kind of loose and flowing. Like if you look at the professional tennis players, they're kind of like whipping the racket around like a wand almost. They're not really over gripping the racket.
Now, how much does your body come into it? A lot of amateur tennis players will just swing with their arm. What factors should you use using the rest of your body?
Yeah, I'd say use more of your legs and your hips and your shoulders and your core instead of just your wrist and your elbow, because the biggest muscles in your body are your legs and, bigger muscle groups rather than just a little bitty wrist and putting all that tension on your elbow and your wrist. Use your whole body.
Now, do you see a lot of shoulder problems in tennis?
Yeah, I just overuse injuries. A lot of the kids are playing tournaments, with the COVID, not quite as much, but in the past, the kids are playing almost every weekend to work on their national rankings. So overuse injuries due to the shoulder. So, just the different types of strings and kind of doing the quality practices instead of quantity of how many hours per week just to really make it count.
Are there any type of mobility things you recommend for people who are going to be hitting a lot of overhead shots or hitting hard serves?
Well, your contact point is very important. If you're hitting late or too far behind your body, that causes too much stress on your arm and your elbow and different parts of the body. But if you get behind the ball and you have some forward momentum and you could lean into your shot, that's going to avoid a lot of injuries.
So I guess it sounds sort of like your toss matters. What direction would you want to toss as you're starting a tennis serve?
Yeah, on the serve, I'd like to say try to keep it between 6 inches and 12 inches inside the baseline. If you toss it behind the baseline, it's not going to work very well because you can't get your momentum into the shot.
Now, you'd also mentioned Achilles injuries, which didn't hit me first off as something that you commonly see, but you do a lot of cutting and directional changes. When do you commonly see this in people? I think you mentioned over 55.
Yeah, a couple of the men and women that are older in age, they don't warm up as much as they should, and sometimes when you're playing in the kind of the off season when it might be 28 or 35, 40 degrees, you got to really make sure you warm up extra because obviously the temperature is colder and your bodies need to warm up. So just maybe jumping rope or just doing a light jog before you get out there and play. And also maybe a little foam rolling before and after playing would loosen up the ligaments and the muscles as well.
And what parts would you foam roll when you're warming up?
I would do my calf muscle and a little bit of my IT band, maybe the upper back and the shoulder. You don't want to do your lower back though. It's more the shoulder and the upper back. And then I see a lot of people doing their calf massage with the foam rollers.
Very good. You mentioned also some other forms of racket sports, particularly pickleball and platform tennis. Can you tell me a little bit about those and how those differ from more of a traditional tennis sport?
Yeah, pickleball is actually America's fastest growing sport, which is pretty impressive because obviously there's a lot of sports being played. But this is it's thought to be an older population, but now they actually have a professional circuit for professional pickleball players there's a tournament coming up. I think they said the prize money's $30,000 purse. So it's coming in strong for the top, retired tennis players or, people that choose to play pickle instead of tennis. But basically, it's a different paddle, and you play with a wiffle ball, and it's 1/3 of the size of a tennis court. So the rallies are very action-packed, and it's a little more longer rallies, and you don't have to pick up the tennis ball quite as much because the length of rallies are longer. And I just like doing both sports, tennis and pickle. But, it's similar but different because of the different strategy involved and the different equipment, and obviously the court size makes it very different.
Now, any different on preparations or things that you would need to do to prevent injuries when playing pickleball than when playing traditional tennis?
Just still warm up the way you should. Jump rope, light jog, a couple calisthenics. A dynamic stretching before you play makes sense, and then the static stretching after you play. But pretty much for all sports, you gotta do some warm up before you play. Otherwise, that's when injuries happen.
And what about platform tennis? That was another sport that you mentioned that was a little bit different.
Yeah, that's kind of known as a country club sport. I know the city of St. Louis has 8 platform tennis courts. You play in a cage, actually. You can play off the walls, so if somebody hits it really fast, you just kind of dodge the ball, and then you can play it off the ricochet off the wires, which makes it pretty exciting and entertaining. But it's known as a winter sport. The season goes between November and all the way through February, March. And there's a platform tennis league, the St. Louis Gateway Platform League, which I'm a part of. And they actually have about, 125 participants. Every Tuesday night they have a challenge ladder league. But that's the same court dimensions as pickleball, but it's played with a harder, denser ball, and it's played in the wintertime with heated coils to melt the snow. Because obviously it's a wintertime sport, which is the time that you play that sport.
And so it is outdoors in the winter.
Yeah, it could be 12 degrees, and you're out there for a platform tennis match. We had a member guest tournament, and it was 12 degrees, and that's just part of the sport. You got to deal with the elements, It's either indoor tennis or outdoor platform tennis, and some people like to kind of brave the elements and get some value out of their 12 months of the membership by doing an outdoor winter sport at a country club.
And I guess the importance of warm-up would be even more crucial when it's 12 degrees or so outside.
Yeah, because, tendons pop, this and that. You got to make sure you're nice and warmed up. Maybe spend twice as long to warm up if it's under 50 degrees, I'd say, or at least under 40 or 30 degrees.
Now, for someone who may be interested in getting involved in tennis or pickleball and has either never played or is getting back after a long break, what recommendations would you make?
Just start out slow. You don't want to not play for 12 months and then go out and play 5 hours. Slowly ease into it, maybe 45 minutes 3 times a week, and then you can increase that to an hour 3 times a week, and then by a month or two, you can probably go 3 days a week at like 90 minutes or 120 minutes. But you just don't want to go right into it when you haven't played for a year or so.
So starting slow and building up gradually.
Yeah.
Now, about tennis lessons, you teach lessons around the St. Louis area. If someone would need a lesson or two to get back in the swing of things, how would they get in touch with you?
Well, yeah, I have my phone number. It's 513-673-2436, and that's my cell phone number that I do tennis lessons. I'm the owner of a traveling racket sports company, and I have partnerships with various different indoor and outdoor clubs around the St. Louis area. But mainly I'm at Forest Lake Tennis Club for summer camps, and also we have fun ideas called Pizza and Plays. And I'm also the pickleball director at Forest Lake Tennis Club, and also there's a new facility that's going to have 10 permanent pickleball courts at the Powerplex, which is the old St. Louis Mills Mall out in Hazelwood.
And you also do some equipment sales, correct?
Yes, I do.
And can you tell us about the equipment you provide and how people would get in touch about that?
Yeah, I provide pickleball rackets, platform tennis rackets. I have 7 different vendors that I represent for different manufacturers of racket sports. I have a new one that came out, and a lot of new brands like me to try their product, and then I have demos that the customers can try. And once again, that's just through my phone number or at Forest Lake Tennis Club. That's my main location currently.
And do you do any specific equipment fitting or recommendations for people who are looking for new equipment?
Yeah, I can measure their grip size. They come, the standard is 4 3/8, but if you have a bigger hand, you might need 4/8 or 5/8, or if it's a smaller kid, it might be a 1/8 grip, but it's pretty easy to measure a grip, but I can always help with that and give string recommendations.
Well, it was great having you here today, Tony. Are there any closing thoughts that you would leave for people who may be interested in getting involved in tennis?
I just really enjoy growing the sport. The sport's been great to me. We provide quality, affordable tennis options at multiple locations with Teufel Tennis. Teufel Tennis, we come to you. So if you have a high school or a public court that you'd like me to come visit you at, just give me a phone call, and I'll either send myself or one of my other coaches out there and continue to grow the sport of tennis, pickleball, and platform tennis.
Well, thanks again, Tony, for taking the time to be here, and have a great day.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that was a lot of fun catching up with Tony, and I hope you got something out of it too. If you are listening to this from either the St. Louis area or the Cincinnati, Ohio area, and you need some help for tennis, either getting back into the sport after not playing for the first time, or if you're a competitive tennis player who just needs to up their game, certainly get in contact with Tony and he'll help you out. Now, if you do need help for an injury, whether that be a shoulder injury, tennis elbow, Achilles, or some other problem, and you're in the St. Louis area, give me a call at 314-941-3970, and I'd be happy to discuss the problem with you and see what we can do to help. And if you're listening to this from outside of the area, but maybe dealing with some tennis elbow, one of my very, very early guests on the podcast, Emma Green, now known as the Tennis Elbow Queen, has an online program for people suffering from tennis elbow, whether it's from playing tennis or just doing repetitive activities in your everyday life. And I'll put a link in the show notes to Emma's online course so that you can get help for tennis elbow even if you're not in the St. Louis area. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you did, give us a like or thumbs up, and subscribe to our podcast so you get notified of our future episodes. Thanks again, and have a great day.
Thanks for listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you live in the St. Louis area and would like Dr. Candy's help to find a solution to your pain, visit our website at stlpainexpert.com. Email Dr. Candy at dave@stlpainexpert.com or call Dr. Candy's clinical practice at 314-941-3970. If you're listening from outside the St. Louis area but would still like some help, feel free to contact us to learn more about our virtual health coaching. Regardless of where you live, please share our podcast with anyone you know who would benefit from learning more about pain and what can be done to relieve it. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform so you get notified when we release a new episode. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy us again soon.